not Chris.
Hold on. Things got weird.
Well. Thank you. Throw dollars. Sorry. Have you ever thought that there was something different about you? Maybe something dark within you, something broken. Were you, or have you ever been ashamed of what you have done in your past, or perhaps those things were unforgivable or unspeakable things? I, like many of you, have grown up with these thoughts nagging at me. I was always the black sheep. Well, someone was paid that role, and I did it so well. I had loved and lost one set of family to my addictions, drugs and alcohol. And why is history always destined to repeat itself? I have seen it, lived it, hated it. When I was young, there were things that I have no memories of, but some evidence that things were done to me. I remember, I call them waking dreams. I have them from time to time, where you know you're awake and they're as real as if you're standing there with them. But when I close my eyes, I see this person in the corner of a dark room smoking a cigarette. I know because I can see the cherry glow red and subside, and see the ash fall. I wondered what that was about. Years later, when I found out that I was adopted, and my sister as well, we were able to meet our birth family. And I asked my birth mother, Dorothy, what about this waking dream? What is it about? Do you know anything about it? And when I told her what had happened, what I saw, she went, that was Uncle Carl. He was the molester of the family. Why do we have to live up or down to other people's expectations? Who are they to say what we can or cannot do? Hard to believe I was caught up in something that I couldn't even remember. I was always the most sensitive person in the family. Oh, sorry, I'm the most sensitive person in my family. I was the quiet class clown. Everyone that I grew up with, when they see me these days, they said, yes, I remember you. You were the humored wallflower. You didn't really do anything, but you were fun to talk to. But laughter has always been my crutch. But I am a lucky one. I realized before I was too old, 37 or so, that there was someone watching over me. That person had always been around, just barely out of sight, just around the corner. I knew that he was there, just a hint of his presence. Now, I believe that I am a Christian man. I grew up in a family who believed in God. We went to church every Sunday. My stepfather, however, was hell on wheels. He was hell on wheels for 6 and amens on Sunday. It wasn't too many years ago that I got to see him after my mother had divorced him many, many years ago. He had this ability to find you. If he wanted to see you, he didn't have to know your address. Somehow, he just showed up. Well, I'm an actor now. Well, I work a regular day job, but I like money. He showed up at one of the productions that I was in, and I was directing, and I wrote a few things in it. And I saw him out in the audience, and my jaw hit the floor. because he beat up my mother, and in turn my mother turned on us because he was a man. But he took me out to dinner that night. When I thought to myself, it's going to be McDonald's. He's a cheap bastard. But it turned out to be McDonald's. It wasn't even the place that was important. What I took was the opportunity to talk to him. You know, I took his hand and I said, Dad. I actually called him Dad. I said, you are real. It was not pleasant growing up with you. You did so many things. You turned me against God. I thought to myself, if God could embrace that man, and he could quote the Bible back and forth, forwards and backwards, in Greek if you'd like. But he didn't live it. And I thought if God could embrace that, allow that, I didn't want anything to do with him. But I had always been sentenced to repeat my mistakes. It is true what they say, unless you change something, nothing changes. I hid behind my acting, afraid of what people might say when they meet the real me, the real Michael. Let me tell you about two characters that helped me along in my, well, sometimes with my drunkenness and trying to stop that. The first one was Tom of Bedlam. He is a madman, a murderer of children, which I have played for 30 years off and on at Renaissance festivals. And the other, well, Judas Iscariot. Now, in my past, I have played Jesus when I had hair. And it wasn't Jesus who showed me or taught me anything. He taught playing that role was the true acting experience because I was evil. He showed me exactly who I was not. Now, I was given a monologue many years ago. It's Judas Iscariot sitting in the dark counting his coins. Judas showed me exactly who I was. I think that at times in our lives we struggled to be the most awake. But when I found out that Judas showed me who I was, that I was worth nothing more than wretched refuse. The funny thing about me playing Jesus, I felt that perhaps I was going to spontaneously combust like a vampire or something. I was in the light. I want to hide. Now, when I told my mom, she's gone now, passed on a couple years ago. But when I told my mom about my redemption story, she just smiled and patted me on the knee and said, I told you he would wait for you. Now, that's all just background. But it has led me to tell you this. On the darkest night of my life, when I was about to lose another wife and child to my addictions, on our anniversary, she found drugs in my pocket and kicked me out. Now, there are times also in your life when you hear what you know is the ultimate truth. And I knew it was the end. And on that date, January 21st, I only had one other key that I could use. It was a little Presbyterian church in Belton. See, I was an elder there, whether I was a drunk or a druggie. I was still an elder. I think it's mostly because it was a really small church, and they have to use everyone. So in the middle of the night, since it was in the middle of the night, I let myself in. I knew where the TV was. I went up and watched TV until I grew tired, and I went down to the nursery where my wife had designed and decorated and painted and put clouds on the ceiling. It was a beautiful, beautiful place. I made myself a pallet and I went to sleep. Now, people say you have to be ready to hear a certain thing. But on my worst night ever, I heard my name called in the middle of the night. And one of the most repeated assurances in the Bible is, do not be afraid. I was not frightened. I did not say, where did that come from? Who was that? Who's there? The first thought in my head was, what are you doing? Perhaps it was finding out I was adopted, felt like I was not wanted. Perhaps it was the drugs and alcohol that I imbibed, standing in the darkness, glowing in the revelry of it. Perhaps it was me trying to hide in plain sight. When he pulled me, kicking and screaming, into the light, that he had allowed me to go through everything I had put myself through and survive by his grace, I found that I was exactly who I was supposed to be. All those things that I had gone through, been put through, were all to shape me to who I am supposed to be. Now, I have played a lot of the bad guys in the Bible. Judas, Barabbas, Pontius Pilate, even Satan. One of my best critiques playing Satan is that usually most people will not even shake my hand when I'm done. I think they're afraid I've got brimstone on it or something. And I found out the reason I know Satan so well is that it's the same face that I shave every day. Well, or not. In fact, after one of my portrayals of him, one preacher even prayed for the unburdening of my soul. That was the best critique I have ever gotten. But I didn't have the heart to tell him it's only a role. So I spent years hiding behind my roles. You know, I was willing. I was my own Judas. Out of my own best interests and best attempts, I failed. I misunderstood. And on that night, when I was pulled kicking and screaming back into the light, I found out I was changed in spite of me. He told me, and in my head I could hear it, child, let me take what you have and give you some real wealth. See, everything that I had done shaped me to who he wanted me to be. Now this last thing. We all, I believe, have the same chances to take a different path, or to take the same path with a different thought pattern, which changes everything. You can be half empty or half full, depending on how you see yourself. And finally, if God would see fit to save me from me, you all have nothing to worry about. And I want to say this, really. Forgiveness comes in many shapes, shades, and sizes, with chips or without chips. Where is he? I pray for each and every one of you that when your moment comes, if you are lost, when that moment comes, you grasp onto it. And that you realize that everything you have that is different is a gift. And that the more different gifts that we all have, the more ways we can serve him with the gifts he has given us. I have spent time willingly walking in the dark, hand in hand with Satan. And the light that was missing I was there all the time. I just had not turned it on yet. I have spent many years out front, but I am very uncomfortable speaking about Michael. But this is only the second time that I have shared my redemption story. My name is Michael Crowley, and, well, this is my brave.